All right, so many people are asking my wife, now we have our sourdough starter, what do we do with it? So I have some basic recipes set up here. I'm not going to do them all, but it is breakfast time, so I'm at least going to make pancakes because pancakes. One of the first things I do, I cook with a lot of cast iron, so I am going to set that up warming right off the bat. All right, just a simple recipe. This is actually a half a recipe, so I've had to modulate it a little bit. So starting out with a cup of flour, we're going to go with 2 teaspoons of baking powder. That's soda, so start with the powder. 2 teaspoons of that. A half a teaspoon of baking soda. That's why it's very important to not get those two mixed up. That's roughly about that much. A full-on tablespoon of sugar. Come over here to the sugar well. And that's our dry ingredients. Heat on the skillet there. Now, my recipe technically calls for a half an egg. I'm not going to waste half of an egg, so we're going to do a full egg. Give that a quick scramble. And now that I have this half an egg, I can actually moderate the rest of the liquid ingredients around it. Feel like I'm missing something, but no, I'm not. Okay, I'm thinking about a different recipe altogether. And there, we are also going to go with a cup, a full-on cup of sourdough. And that's 3/4 of a cup. Now, in later videos, I will go on about how wet ingredient measures and dry ingredient measures should never be interchanged. But this is pancakes. It's a rather forgiving recipe. I'm going to mix those two together now. See what kind of batter we get out of that. And then I have some milk here. If this ends up being too wet, or sorry, too dry, I'll add milk to it, which looks like I'm going to have to. And this is one of those things you kind of go by feel. It's like you want pancake batter consistency, which is going to be something kind of like that. And you can see right now that's turning into more of a biscuit dough, so I'm just going to add milk. And then if it's too wet, then I add more flour. But that's looking pretty good there. Might actually add a little bit more milk, but we'll give it mix it a little bit longer here. It's a little bit stringy there, so a touch more milk. Now, typically with a pancake batter, you do want to let it rest, because those are going to mix together. Those are going to continue. The whole chemical process is going to continue flowing. For me, the kind of pancakes I like, I'd say that right about there is almost a good consistency. If you want a thinner pancake, then by all means put more milk. That's gonna thicken up some more. So Just add a touch more. And that's the thing with pancake batter, though. The longer you leave it sit, actually the thicker it's going to get. Unless you have it way too watery. Now that's about perfect restaurant quality pancake batter right there. See how hot are we? Generally with cast iron, cast iron retains a lot of heat. Now I have so much cast iron, and there are proper ways to treat it. There's proper ways to use it. There's proper ways to clean it. Generally, if you can hold your hand over a cast iron pan like that for a while, it's not hot enough. So we're going to leave that sit. So we're going to wait for that to come up to temperature, and then we'll come right back. All right, so that's right about the right temperature. One thing I do want to mention quickly, my recipe actually calls for oil to go into the batter. I didn't put it in. The reason I'm giving for that is I have double the amount of egg, so that's already extra fat in there. I don't want any more. Now, into the pan, I'm going to put some canola oil because that's what people have readily available. You can also use butter, or we save all of our bacon grease whenever we make bacon, and we like to use that. But for the purposes of this, I'm going to use oil. So you're going to put, that might be a little bit too much. That's okay. The pancake is actually going to absorb some of that. Just give it a nice little swirl. I want to make sure that the bottom of the pan is coated. And I actually have somewhere a portioner, a bigger portioner than that. I'm going to get rid of the wooden spoon. This is the size of this scoop. That is a very good question. I don't know what the size of this scoop is. It's about big enough for a pancake for me. So you don't have to use a scoop. You can free pour it. I like for all my pancakes to be roughly about the same size, so I use the same scoop. And it's going right into the pan. You can hear that nice little sizzle there as soon as it hits the oil. I probably have enough room for two. And yeah, they're going to touch. We'll take care of that later. Oh yeah, you can really hear them sizzling now. And it's fine if they touch. And whoever said that pancakes have to be perfectly round, they're wrong. Pancakes just have to be delicious. That's the only rule to pancakes. They have to be delicious. You want that golden brown. You can see how it's bubbling, so that would be all the gluten and the fermentation process happening, and it's releasing the air and carbon dioxide in the dough. You can see the bubbles starting to form around the edges. Now we're going to wait for those edges there to start getting all nice and a nice golden color before we flip them. Just going to separate those out a little bit. You can see how much rise we've gotten out of that already. Those bubbles are forming awesome. Over here, it's starting to lift up. We're getting that nice golden color around the edges there slightly. I'm going to let it color up a little bit more. And my little mess there. All right, start seeing how all these bubbles here are forming and how they're all popped and they're leaving these little moon craters. That is pretty much when your pancake is telling you that it wants to be flipped. I'm going to start with this guy. Hopefully I don't make too huge of a mess. There we go. Nice little color there. Got this guy. And it's okay if we get some dough on top of the other one. It's not that big of a pan, but we'll flip it back over and get that dough cooked out. The smell of that is just fantastic. Because you got that sourdough bread kind of smell in there, but mixed in with the pancakes, it just smells like breakfast. Now, pancakes are also one of those things you can have a lot of fun with. You can put fruit in them. Sometimes what I like to do is actually when you have the pancakes just poured into the pan, slice some banana up on there. Some people like to add some chocolate chips to that as well. Blueberries. Growing up, we had a lot of Saskatoons, so we would actually put Saskatoon berries in our pancakes. I was always a bit of a weird child and always experimenting with flavors, so I would actually put bacon bits in my pancake. It was delicious. And then I would put a sunny side up egg on top of it. Anyway, not for everybody, but that was one of my favorites. Here's another good little trick. When you have your pancakes, sometimes it's good to just try and move them around. They are hot, but if they don't slide around easily, they're not ready to be taken out. They'll let you know. They'll start releasing themselves from the pan because they'll start to caramelize. All those natural sugars and all that in the dough and from all that starch will start to caramelize and create all this wonderful coloring. And then once that happens, it actually starts to release from the pan. See? That one there's already released. This guy's being stubborn. There we go. Now that little bit of dough that was on top there, just the residual heat from the pancake itself has already cooked it down. Turn down the heat in the pan a little bit. Cast iron is awesome. Whatever heat you put into it, it holds on to. So you can always adjust the heat on your stove, because if you leave your stove at a constant heat, the cast iron is just going to absorb it and get hotter and hotter and hotter. I'm just going to look inside the pancake there to see if the dough has formed all the way. Always the first couple of pancakes are sometimes the sacrificial lambs of the world. I'm going to flip this guy back over. You can see all that caramelization that happened there. And we're going to move this guy over. Just going to sear that one side because we still had a little bit of that residual dough that was still a little bit raw. But yeah. And always in between each set, more oil. Because the pancakes actually absorb oil. That's another reason why I didn't want to put more oil in the dough, is I knew they were going to get oil from the pan. That is hot. You know, this guy here, I'm just going to do one big guy. It's going to be a double scoop pancake. There we go. That's about the size of a proper farmer's pancake. Yeah. There's your basic recipe and basic, well, a very basic and fun thing that you can do with your sourdough starter. I'm going to keep on making these pancakes, and we're going to enjoy a wonderful breakfast. All right, guys. See ya.